Each and every Monday is $9 Monday at WagerTalk.com. All daily picks packages are priced at only $9, including $40 5% best bets. As an added bonus, all new users will receive $25 in WagerBucks credited to their accounts, available for immediate use after their initial $9 Monday purchase. So make sure to take advantage of $9 Mondays at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome into First Pitch for Monday, July 26th. I am Drew Martin, Bryan Leonard, and Tony Finn of WagerTalk.com. We're doing the show live from Las Vegas, Nevada. We got 4 games on the slate. Best bets at the end. First up here, Bryan Leonard, WagerTalk.com. Happy Monday morning to you, Bryan. Welcome into the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here and looking excited for another full day of baseball here on a Monday.
And next up, Tony Finn. Tony, happy Monday morning. Welcome into the show, buddy.
I know you guys have a way of making things happen. So Monday's good, though, but I prefer it maybe be September, end of August. Let's get on with – no, I shouldn't say that. This is a baseball show. Looking forward to tonight. Good card.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. First game up, guys. We got the Washington Nationals and the Philadelphia Phillies here, Bryan. We get Ross versus Howard. 9.5 being the total. Seeing minus 120 here. That's the Philadelphia Phillies at home. 87 degrees. A lot of weather, hot weather on tonight's card, guys. Something to look out for. The 3 games we're talking all well over 80 degrees here. Maybe the ball will be flying. We'll wait and see for that, Bryan. But this is actually my best bet, and I know it's Tony Finn's as well, so that will be a good segment at the end. But interested in your opinion here. The Nationals and Phillies, NL East. What are you thinking tonight?
Yeah, hot weather usually means the ball travels a little bit, and we see that every year when it gets warm in Colorado. The ball starts flying out. Philadelphia, very good hitter's park. And we got 2 teams here with Ross and Howard going today. We could see some runs in this game. Spencer Howard's one of those guys that he's highly rated for Philadelphia. Hasn't done a great deal in the major leagues at this point, but if you take a look at some of his advanced stats, he's done very well. He's got an ex-WOBA of 310, ex-batting average of 201, ex-slugging of 330. This is a guy I think we can get some value on as he pitches right now for Philadelphia. Joe Ross, the problem with Joe Ross is he's very inconsistent. Health has been his concerns throughout his career. When he's good, he's really good. But when he's bad, he's been bad. And so far this year, for the most part, his exit velocity, hard hit rate, strikeout rate, walk rate are all pretty good. But if you take a look at the key advanced stats of the ex-WOBA, the ex-batting average and ex-slugging, he's below average in those regards. So it's hard to handicap a game of Ross because the extremes are really tough, the best and the worst. I prefer the Philadelphia side. We've got some situations in Howard. I think he's just a better pitcher than Ross at this point. So the line's a little bit cheap in my regard. So I lean with Philadelphia here. Didn't make my card.
And Tony, what are you thinking tonight in the NL East, Nationals and Phillies?
Well, this is as well my game, as you mentioned, my best bet. So I'll mention this. I like the Phillies here, but I'll detail it and outline why at the end of the show, if that's okay.
And Tony, I lost you there, but I'm guessing we're gonna wait until best bets to break down the game.
I thought for a minute I froze up, or I lost you. What I said was, yeah, this is my best bet for the day. I'm also on Philly, but I would break it down. I'd break down the whys and the whats and how come I like this game at the end of the show, if that's okay.
Oh, that is okay. Yeah, we'll move on to the AL East, guys, and a good one. This one on ESPN. A lot of tickets going to be written here. We get Hatch versus Pivetta. We're seeing the Boston Red Sox here, Tony, minus $1.25 at home. Total of 11. And we've actually seen the Red Sox take some money, Tony, up to about minus 140 right now. Again, this game going to be on ESPN, AL East. A lot of tickets written, prime time. What are you thinking, Blue Jays and Red Sox?
Well, I think, first off, Hatch is there'll be a lot of people ask questions about Hatch, weekend warriors that don't know a lot about Hatch, or don't follow the AL East per se. But I think Hatch will have a significant role. My question about Hatch tonight is I've tried my best to get intel on what they're going to do with him. Is this an opener? Are they, because Hatch hasn't, his role for this team has been in short relief, 1 inning, 2 innings at the most. So this will be a game that they probably would like to stretch him out. But how much can you get out of Hatch now? Pivetta, you know what you get from Pivetta. His last time he faced Philly, his last game, which was the 19th, I believe, of July, he was he did last 6.2 innings, guys. How? I have no idea. 11 hits. Maybe because he only gave up 4 earned runs, but 11 hits, a home run, 2 walks, only 4 Ks. The ground balls to fly balls were pretty even for him in that game. But and Boston won. They ended up winning 13-4. And Pivetta actually got the win in that game, raised his ERA to 4.37. But here's a situation where Boston, it's easy to get behind them and say, listen, look what they've done again to the Yankees. They've demoralized the Yankees. Yankees don't have the posture of a winner, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is they were as inconsistent either at the plate or on the mound as the Yankees were. That series was an absolute mess. I mean, you didn't know what you were getting not from inning to inning. You didn't know what you were getting from batter to batter. So I would lean Toronto, the visitors tonight. I think they're in a position where if they're going to make any run, have any chance to be part of the postseason bracket, it starts very soon. They have to win some games in situations like this, guys, with a Hatch on the mound.
Brian, I totally agree with Tony here. Looking at the Blue Jays, it's kind of almost like now or never. They're 4 games back of the wild card. They're sitting 3 games over 500. Now, they are a good road team here, Brian, and especially a team that's played in Buffalo, played down in Florida. They've kind of always been on the move here. Talking about Hatch, his AAA numbers, very good, Brian. And on the other side, like Tony just pointed out, Pavetta's numbers, his last time out against Boston, really ugly, double-digit hit numbers there. So this Blue Jays lineup has seen him well. I think it's a little value here on the Blue Jays at the big plus price. What do you think of tonight in Fenway?
I can see the Blue Jays scoring some runs here. Pivetta has not pitched well against Toronto this year. In fact, he's faced them 3 times with his game scores being 41, 35, and 38. And keep in mind, league average is 50. So he's got hit really well against Toronto. Let's see, he's given up 14 earned runs in 16.2 innings. That's not good. And this Toronto team could surely hit. They can hit on the road. They can hit at home. They're a very good hitting team. So I expect Toronto to have some nice success here. But I also think Boston's going to have success offensively. Hatch is a guy, he pitched in relief last year for Toronto, and he was pretty good in relief. But he's a starter. They've been trying to stretch him out. But if you take a look at his games in the minors this year, he's really not going many innings. He's going 4, not even 5 innings a game. So he's a guy that I think is going to struggle against this Boston offense and a good hitting ballpark here. I expect this game to be high scoring. I like the over in this game. It's a high total. It's 11. But if you take a look at the recent games between these two teams, 11 runs, 17 runs. They did have the game with 3 runs before that, but 22, 9, 11, 15, 10, 8, 9. Lots of scoring in these games, and I think these two pitchers are primed to be able to hit against today. So I like the total in this game, over 11. It's a high total for a reason, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring offensive shootout today.
Could see that as well. The Red Sox lineup hot. That's the one thing keeping me off of the Toronto side, but it does speak towards the over. Hitters Park, it's warming up there in the Northeast. Another game where it looks to be pretty hot, up near 90 degrees in Kansas City for our third game here. Brian, we get the Chicago White Sox, number 1 in the AL Central. Dallas Keuchel on the hill. That's Tony Slick Finn's boy there coming from the left side. Going up against the Royals here. Mike Minor, battle of lefties. We're seeing the White Sox minus 120. Of course, everybody knowing out there, the White Sox against lefties. It hasn't been as good of late here. 9.5 being the total. Interesting handicap with Kansas City being a lot better at home, Brian. What are you thinking White Sox and Royals in the AL Central?
Yeah, I like to bet into these type of games because we all know last year how the White Sox just raked against lefties. And if you just take a look at their record, they're 19-8 versus lefties on the season. But then when you break down the runs created model, the WRC plus, they're only about 104, so only about 4% better than league average against lefties this year. And the guys who bet for a living that have moved these lines early on, we've seen that this year. It was a surprise a couple months ago when we would see money coming in against the White Sox going against the lefty. And now we see why. The results haven't been there. Like I said, they're 19-8 against lefties. But the guys that bet these openers know what they're doing, and they're moving those lines down. So they know the White Sox are not the same team. Now, obviously, they're getting one of their best players back, one of the outfielders coming back tonight. Luis Robert, I believe, is back tonight. So that'll have an effect. But, Mike Minor's been one of those guys that has been able to go a lot of innings and sometimes get yourself a win. But this year, he just hasn't been very good as of late. He's had a good record against the White Sox, a 58 game score his last 5 against them. But until his last start was a 60 against Milwaukee, he really struggled. And so I'm not a big fan of Minor in this game. I think the White Sox can hit him. I think Kansas City can have some success against Keuchel. But in this game, the line's about what I would expect it to be. So I don't see a lot of value here. So I'm passing on this one. But with the warmer weather, we could see some offense in this.
Yeah, we definitely could see some offense here. And, depending what ratings you want to go off of for the bullpens, Tony, I would have both of these bullpens kind of bottom half. I guess you could make the argument the White Sox bullpen has been a little bit better. But, Kansas City at home, one of the teams where their home road splits offensively a lot better there in Kansas City. And Mike Minor and Dallas Keuchel, the two pitchers here, one interesting note that I found, Minor, his numbers against the Chicago White Sox, which Brian just touched on, actually not bad this season. And he's actually going to be facing him for the 4th time this year. Whereas Keuchel going up against the Royals here, Tony, hasn't faced them yet this season, which in division, I found that kind of interesting. Not really sure who that favors considering Minor's numbers have been pretty decent against the White Sox. How does that factor into your handicap here, Tony? And what are you thinking tonight in the AL Central?
Well, when we were talking before we went live, and I mentioned Keuchel, and I was going to mention this game. This was a game I probably would have leaned on the home dog to. But the truth is that would have been simply it's a reach. You just outlined it, I think. And Keuchel's, he's been pretty good. I mean, he's been adequate. He's been serviceable with this White Sox team, but his peripherals, guys, are so far away from what it was when. And I think it's not even fair to say they're so far away from when he was a Cy Young winner with the Houston Astros. But the truth is, his strikeout rate is the lowest it's been since his rookie season, a little over 5 per 9 innings. His hard contact is the highest it's been in his career, even higher than as a rookie. So that alone is enough that for us, most of us would say we're going to steer clear of this or Keuchel in this situation. However, the Royals don't hit lefties very well. They aren't they're one of the least patient teams at the plate. They'll swing, they swing at bad balls, and they have some bad ball hitters, Solar, some, et cetera, et cetera. But this isn't a game where you can support the Royals. It's difficult, even though Minor has been pretty good the last 2 starts. He got a win last time out, and because you guys have mentioned it, Chicago has a history, at least the last couple of years, of being brutally good against left-handed pitching. That's not really the case, as Brian said recently and lately. If you look at some of those numbers, left-handers they've faced in this season, they aren't as dominant as they were last year. But this game isn't a game that where I think you support the dog, Kansas City here. You probably stick with Keuchel much for the reasons you mentioned, and Drew. And this is the first time this year, so that means something with new guys in the lineup and a little different lineup than they've been in past. So I would say, listen, it's not the great price. I don't even think it's a fair price, to be honest with you, because of Keuchel's numbers this year. But Chicago, if they're not drained from that series against Milwaukee, they're probably the support here. Back Keuchel and the White Sox, who are clearly the best team in this division.
Yeah, and number 1 in the AL Central. I mean, the run differential's plus 115 guys.
Yeah.
The rest of the division is in the negative. So in terms of using run differential, and they're starting to become a pretty good spread there between the Chicago White Sox in first place, and I believe Cleveland is in second place, but it's starting to be a little bit of a gap there. One thing I noticed with the Royals, because I was looking to get on them as a plus price dog, but they're only 20 and 35 against teams over 500. They really haven't stepped up in class well. It's something that kept me off of there, but the White Sox lineup hasn't been hitting that great of late either. So it's a game that arguments towards both sides here, but Tony and Brian both talking about, players coming back to lineups. And sure enough, we got the trade deadline on Friday, guys. Two guys here talking about, success in the betting markets in MLB. Brian and Tony have had a lot of success betting the diamond. Brian, over the last 4 years, near the top, if not the best baseball handicapper, and Tony Finn, lifetime #1 in profits made at WagerTalk.com. So two guys to ask this question in terms of this week and maybe next week after the trade deadline. Brian, start with you. Is this a good week, in your opinion, to be betting MLB? And let's use the Rays example. I've been betting them a lot since the Nelson Cruz trade. They did lose yesterday. Before that, they were smacking the ball around their lineup. I think he fits very well, and that it could take a little while for the odds makers to kind of gravitate towards that shift, just because one player can make a big difference in a lineup. What are your thoughts on the MLB trade deadline and how it works with your handicapping?
For the trade deadline, it all depends on what the expectations were for the teams coming into the season. A team like the Cubs are expected to contend. They're not having a bad season. They're only 2 games below 500, but it's a team with a lot of veterans on it that had high expectations. So they're a team I'm really trying to look to fade during this time. There are other teams, young teams, Seattle, for example, a team that's having a lot of success. They didn't expect to have it, and they believe in themselves. So I think it's something. Well, there was talk earlier today that Seattle's thinking about bringing in one of the top free agents out there. I can't remember who it was, but that would be a nice shot in the arm for a team for Seattle. I think it'd be a mistake because they're really, you take a look at their record of 1-run games and extra inning games. They've been very lucky, but they have played well against good teams so far this year. So that's a team that you make a little bit of a change, and the players on the team are expecting to that's a vote of confidence. So it all depends on what your expectations are. I make good money after the break when people see that certain players have been moved and they think the team has given up. But you got to take a look at the players coming up from the minors and the guys that have been sitting the bench. This is their time to shine. And they've got a chance to get up there and get a lot of at-bats that they normally wouldn't have. And so many times a guy will be sitting the bench and he finally gets a chance to get regular at-bats and he turns into a pretty good hitter. Those are the kind of teams I'm looking to back on. So I'm looking to fade teams that came into the season expecting to do well that haven't. But I'm also looking to play on teams that have traded away some veterans so the young players get a chance to play.
Yeah, I like it, Brian. Good stuff there. And talking about the Mariners, I was reading an article about how they're going to be buyers this year, Brian, because it's been 2 decades since they've seen postseason baseball. They might have had a year there, but they really haven't been in the mix for quite some time, talking about the Seattle Mariners. So it'll be cool to see them get a shot towards the end and make a playoff push. But Tony, thoughts here on the trade deadline?
It's convoluted how I feel about the trade deadline. And he's accurate in many. He feels the same way. I feel a lot of teams. The Cubs right now. We spoke about this before we went on air too. They're a mess. They really are. They're kicking the ball around, and if you're backing the Cubs, I mean, unless you're playing them late, you know what the lineup is. If you play this Cubs team early, you never know what you're going to. They may trade away. You may have 3 guys you expected to be in the lineup, may not be in the lineup that night. So that's I think you handle them with kid gloves. There's also teams even before and after the trade line right now, even to next week, and that is, are they playing young guys? Are they playing young kids that are prospects that have shown potential on the farm? Are they playing veterans that are just playing out their career? There's so many different variables that I look at. I will say this though: teams like the Cubs, teams that Brian, not that they were expected. The Cubs weren't expected to do much. In fact, I think they showed their true colors in the first month of the season, and there were guys and players and gamers, handicappers like myself that bought into, the month of May and part of June where they really bounced back, and they were in first place on June 1st. This is a team was in first place on June 1st. I think I was asked the question, who's going to win this division? Well, at that time, this division's pedestrian. It's pedestrian. Say Milwaukee, who has the pitching, but again, yesterday showed that they can be handcuffed with a pedestrian pitcher, and I think Lance Lynn's a pedestrian pitcher, guys. If last 2019 may have been his best year, but I'm straying a little bit here. You have to be careful this week, next week, and then in September 1st when the roster is either expanded. You have to be careful then too. What are you going to get on a nightly basis? Because a lot of times you do not know.
Yeah, good stuff from Tony, Finn, and Bryan Leonard. And guys, just to kind of cap it off here, the trade deadline can have change in it, the lineups, the pitchers. And as sports bettors, in my opinion anyway, the best way to win in this business is to find change and go from that point forward. So we're going to be getting that this week, at least in some form or fashion. Shout out to the chat box here. Rara, Elliot, we got Ty, Manuel, Christian, all in the house, along with others. Appreciate everybody joining us. Feel free to chime in. And guys, please smash that like button. If you're liking the content, it does help us out in the YouTube algorithms. And if you're watching on replay, that works as well. Leave a comment below. Let us know if you like betting MLB this week, next week with the trade deadline coming through. We got one game left. It's the nightcap on the card and the nightcap for the show before best bets here. In the AL West, Tony, we get the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners. McLaughlin going for the Mariners. We were just talking about them. Good young team and a heck of a bullpen out there. Catching a big plus price here, Tony. Seeing them now plus 150, plus 155 even, as Houston has taken some money throughout the day. Minus 170 behind Garcia. This guy Garcia has been lights out, Tony. He's been a heck of a pitcher there for the Astros. Of course, the Astros, number one hitting team versus righties. Heck, they're the number one hitting team in a lot of categories, Tony. Tough to step in front of them. But what are you seeing here in the AL West nightcap, Tony?
They are the most balanced. Listen, Houston, I've said it many times, they're healthy again. And when they're completely healthy and their bullpen isn't being overused, they're the best team in the American League, in my opinion. Unquestionably, they're coached. I'm not a huge fan, guys, of Dusty Baker. I have my grievances with him. We can go back to Wood and Pryor, and I thought that those two guys were way overused. But then I'm kind of the new school on those thoughts too. But the truth is, I think this line is. Listen, McLaughlin, okay, the pitcher for Seattle tonight. One appearance this year, and I'm sure you both know, you've seen it. Goes to Colorado. He's in Colorado. At Coors Field, July 21st, I think was the date. I looked it up last night, and went 5 innings, no hits. He did give up a run. He did walk 3. He didn't strike out one batter in 5 innings. No hits. So essentially, it's a 1.8 ERA for that. That's his ERA. That's his WHIP, 0.60. That's his WHIP. This is a guy, and he didn't play last. I mean, this is a 25-year-old that is in a situation against, arguably, in my eyes, the best team in the American League, against Garcia, who, he's not the guy who's going to win, but he's been really good. Guys, he's been really good. He throws strikes. He knows how to pitch. He's under a pitching coach, or a crew of coaches that are, in my opinion, the best in baseball. Look what they've done. Look at the pitchers they've lost in the last 2 or 3 years. Keuchel being one of them. Not that he's a huge loss, but that's not where the story ends here. This team has got a big break last year, I think, with the COVID, if you want to call COVID a break. But they didn't have to face a lot of crowds that were going to be just brutal on this team because of the stealing drama and that catastrophe, what it was. But here it is, Garcia, Houston against the Seattle team that Bryan was very, and you, Drew, were very blatantly honest about. They've been fortunate. They've been very fortunate. This is a team that has an ERA that's almost 5, 4, 6, something like that, and they score about 4 runs a game. That doesn't equate to what there are right now. I think their run differential does. But if you're not on Houston tonight, maybe even minus 1.5, that way at least you're going to get any money, then I think you stay away from this game. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you can see some of the graphics here, guys. Robert and Joe doing a great job on the back end in terms of where Seattle ranks in the AL West. They are within punching distance here, Bryan. We're getting Garcia. He's a heck of a pitcher. But Houston, I mean, 61-39, as you can see it there. Even on the road, 27-19. It's almost like they're worthy of this price, given their lineup and that they're healthy now, like Tony just talked about. But the Mariners bullpen, it has been good, getting a big plus price here. Tricky handicap, a good one late night. What are you thinking, Brian?
Houston's dominated this series the last 3 years, combined 29-7 against Seattle. Tony pointed out the pitcher for Seattle in this game, only pitching the one game in Colorado. How often do we get to bet against a starter whose strikeout rate is 0 and his walk rate is 17.6? Now, granted, it's a small sample size, and it was in Colorado. You're not going to get a lot of strikeouts in Colorado because the off-speed pitches just don't work as well as they do everywhere else. But it's an interesting handicap from that point. I love the Seattle bullpen here, and I think this will be a bullpen game. That is my only concern about betting Houston. But Houston has dominated this series. Garcia has been terrific this season. I'm not a guy who plays a lot of first innings. But you would have to think Houston winning the first inning, Houston scoring first, those kind of props I think are going to have some value in this. I don't believe they're out this early. It's something they usually put out a little bit later in the day. But if you could find them, Seattle is one of those teams, they win low-scoring games. Houston's a team that can win either way. I would like to play Houston early on. Well, we've got this guy in there at this point. He's not a major strikeout pitcher anyway, if you take a look at his stuff from the minors. So it's a situation for me that you got the Houston bats really should be able to tee off on him. If we can get through a first few innings, then Seattle may be in the game. You can come back and buy some on that. But early on, I think it's a big advantage for Houston here. First 5, first team to score, first inning, that kind of thing.
Yeah, both teams winning three straight here. Bryan Leonard bringing the heat in terms of the props, first inning, maybe score in the first inning, couple different ways to get after that, guys. So most sports books out there carrying that price, carrying a lot of those props. Tony, before we get to best bets, you bring up Dusty Baker, not liking him going back to Pryor and Wood. I just think in 2003, man, the Marlins, they were the better team. You know, it wasn't Dusty Baker. It was that Marlins, that top of the lineup, Luis Castillo, Juan Pierre, man, and that pitching staff. It wasn't Dusty Baker. So I don't know, man.
No, it wasn't.
I got issues.
That's not really. Yeah, and here's the issue I have with Dusty. It wasn't that particular moment in time, that 15-minute moment for the Cubs and the Marlins. It was the fact that these were two of the premier pitchers and in baseball at the time, and 100 pitch limits and stuff like that they weren't what they are today then. They just weren't. And Dusty has a history of, putting his pitchers out there and using them until they're used up and worn out, and not just with the Cubs, but in his history. So I'll give Dusty's been successful. There he is. He's in the dugout still at 105 years old. So he's done a few things right. But that Pryor and Wood situation was one that it'll never leave me, because for those who aren't old enough, I mean, a lot of people will remember that in the audience, I'm going to assume. But when the Cubs had Wood and Pryor, it was a time when that should have been Chicago's return to prominence. It wasn't. They had a few 15-minute moments here in the last decade, but at that time, I really just thought that those two were misused horribly.
Okay, that's fair enough, Tony. But another thing I got issue with is your best bet, because we're up against it. I'll let you go first, buddy. NL East, I think you're heading here for your best bets, tied for best bets. Tony, Finn, start us off, buddy. Where are you heading tonight?
I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to make it short, simple, so you guys have been bored with me and all my verbiage. I'm going with the Howard, the prospect, the Phillies prospect. I really like what Nola did yesterday. I really like what the Phillies are doing. Now they've had a few hiccups since the All-Star break, but this is a team that can challenge the Mets. We talked about this on Joe's show. He does a Saturday morning show, 204 XM radio, and a couple Saturdays ago, I spoke to right after the All-Star break. I said, "Listen, you can get plus 7,000 on the Phillies to win the World Series." That's a stretch, yeah. But there was a great price. I think it was plus 600 or plus 500 or 600 on them to win the NL East. And of the teams that were chasing the Mets, this was the team, the Phillies, that I thought had the chance. They had the home field where they're best at home. They're great at home. And Atlanta had just too many injuries. They'd lost Acuna, their best player, et cetera, et cetera. And the Mets are offensively challenged. They have been. They're still offensively challenged. And I'm a Mets fan. You guys know it. So that said, back to this game. I like what Philly did yesterday. I like Nola bouncing back, better again at home, always better at home. They got a prospect in Howard going tonight, and I think it's a no-brainer, in my opinion. I could start covering Joe Ross and Washington, but I think that Leo said it best. He talked about Ross being inconsistent. This is a Washington team that's not in contention. They're not going to be sellers because they always think they're part of the race, regardless of their record. And we had a lot of comments yesterday when Scherzer was scratched. Oh, there's the first sign he's being traded. Well, I think it was just a sign that Scherzer's being Scherzer and he's injured. Washington, not backable, not consistent enough. We know what Philly's doing. Philly's fighting for their life. And while I'm not a huge fan of the management there in Philly, the manager, I am a fan of the Phillies and who they are and what we're going to get from them. This price, I think, is a steal tonight. You're going to get, I think, I see minus 120 at most places, or at least a little less, a little more. Phillies and Howard, their prospect, who has potential, guys. This guy has 6 starts. I think he's really going to be a good pitcher for them if he stays on the course and just gets on the hip of Nola and learns a little bit of something. But take the Phillies tonight, minus 120 over the visiting Nationals.
All right, guys, and I'll give you the other side of that. My best bet is on the Nationals, plus 108 here, the plus price. And a couple of reasons why. Joe Ross coming off of the IL, it's always a tricky handicap in that, but heck, he had 11 strikeouts, no walks his last time out. He's actually been really good of late. So I think we're actually getting the better starting pitcher in terms of he'll be able to go a little bit longer. And both of these bullpens are not very good. This is a big part of my handicap anyway, going after this Philadelphia Phillies bullpen. Howard, like Tony talked about, a prospect. He could be very good. The only thing is he doesn't go deep. It's mostly, 2 innings, 3 innings. I don't think he's gone more than 4 innings all season long. So we're going to get a lot of this Phillies bullpen. I think that's good for Washington Nationals to kind of break this losing streak. So we get the better lineup against the handedness of pitcher and the better bullpen with the underdog Nationals. But in full disclosure, this wasn't a card I have a lot of action on, so I kind of had to get to it. But plus 108, a smart me for my best bet. Bryan Leonard, throw it over to you to finish us off, buddy. Where are you going for best bets?
I'm not sure Tony knows what the word brief is, because he said he was going to be brief and he's going to do it real fast, and then it took him forever. I missed my lunch date.
I can't believe that you throw me under the bus on those two.
I'm going to take a look at the Cincinnati Reds here against the Chicago Cubs. Much prefer the Reds in this situation. You take a look at the StatCast numbers for Miley. He's been very good across the board. The only thing he's not really good at is his strike rate, which is 19.8. But Hendricks is 17.5. Hendricks is really good in giving up a low hard hit rate and exit velocity and walks. That's what he does. But when you take a look at the key stats of the xWOBA, the X batting average, X slugging, he's not good at all in those regards. So I like the Cincinnati situation here with Wade Miley, a pitcher who I think we get a lot of value on a lot of times. So Cincinnati's the team I'm looking to play in this game, and it'll be interesting to see how that other game works out since you guys are head-to-head.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, in recap here, as we shut it down,